In my Troy Battle Impressions video, I was pretty disappointed in where battles were currently sitting at, especially considering that the developers said they were fairly close to the release build and not much, if anything, would be changed. At the very end of said video, I said that the campaign map is pretty much Troy's only hope at this point, and it really needs to shine. And while I'm not entirely satisfied with what I played, I am still dedicated to bringing you all the information about the game so you can stay informed as possible to make an accurate decision on whether or not you want to play. On June 10th, Gamespot released a developer interview going through the game as a whole. However, I was able to get my hands on the B-roll footage of the interview via Creative Assembly that contains a whole mess of campaign footage with one of the starting Troy factions as Sarpedon, King of Lycia. There's a lot in this video to go over, so let's just get right into it with 7 features explained for Total War Saga Troy. To start, we now have a complete look at the campaign map from the faction selection menu. To give you an idea on how that has changed from the Wrath of Sparta DLC in Rome 2, here is that map. And you can see there are a lot more regions to conquer and expand into. This layout does have a very Three Kingdoms feel to it, although we'll see later in the video that the actual feel of settlements themselves is more along the lines of Warhammer and Attila. When it comes down to the faction selections themselves, I'm wondering why we have 13 different factions on the screen when there are only 8 to choose from on release. Either this is a brief look already showing off some future DLC factions, or the extra guys on the side of Troy have some sort of tie into the main 4, such as client states or something along those lines. It's also interesting the layout of the campaign map regions. Greece is less populated yet has more room for expansion and some bigger regions to explore into. Troy's side seems pretty limited and more compact while also having more factions to deal with right off the bat. I do wish that they had expanded into Anatolia a bit more just to give us some more breathing room, but I suppose that's an intentional idea to make the regions surrounding Troy more volatile overall. I'm pretty impressed with the scale and what looks like well over 150 regions to conquer, which is on scale with Thrones of Britannia. This should also mean that, like Thrones, the map will be pretty detailed throughout, which was one of Thrones' biggest appeals to me personally. In this B-roll footage, we get our first solid look at the settlement details. And aside from the resources, which we'll get into later, there's nothing terribly new we are looking at, although that does not mean it's not worth looking at. For starters, the UI does look pretty dang good. The building and resource icons are very thematic to that black pottery era, and there's plenty of categorical colors to work with that we've seen back from previous Total Wars. I still want to see more of that orange color scheme in there though. Take the orange from the bar on the top and add it to the building UI on the top and the bottom right under the settlement card, and even on the mini-map border, and that would really help bring it around. Still not sold on all that dark gray. The building selection is a near mirror copy of Warhammer's setup, but I'm not opposed to it at all. Being able to clearly see the progression of all buildings inside a category, as well as any units unlocked or settlement requirements, has always been one of Warhammer's shining aspects, and I'm glad we get to experience that same style here. Just a couple of things to notice and then we'll move on. First, influence. It's not determined in this video how it's gained, but it does seem to potentially function similarly to culture. If this is true, then it will also be tied to your public order rating. One unique trait about influence is that by achieving high influence in your settlement, resources will generate or extract at a higher rate, giving you a greater incentive to spread your influence quickly. The other thing to notice is unique regions, both in resources and potential units. Gold is one of the more unique resources in this game and the rarest, so conquering these regions like Pyskos will be essential. And then you have regions like Qanos with its Centaur pastures, enabling the recruitment of multiple variations of Centaur cav units. We've known about resources for a good while now, but we really get to see them in action with this gameplay feature. There are 5 resources in Troy: food, wood, stone, bronze, and gold, in which you'll use a combination of to construct buildings and create units. With this gameplay feature, we can see that these resources generate per turn and stockpile for future use. We can see from the few settlements in the video that food production produces a lot more than what Sarpedon is getting per turn. From that, it's safe to say that we will have a Thrones type unit upkeep using food, and it's also entirely possible that Sarpedon is using his massive surplus in a trade agreement exchange, as this is actually confirmed as a mechanic in the Gamespot interview. Going a step further along that rabbit hole, it means we are looking at a further developed Three Kingdoms diplomacy and trade mechanic, and it is very strikingly similar to my comments on how to enhance Three Kingdoms trade by doing exactly this, exchanging actual materials. Moving along, we can see that buildings all cost certain resources to make, with some costing multiple resources. This is an absolutely fantastic feature to have, as it will really make you think about what buildings you want to create, in which you either have to trade, conquer, or just wait a few turns to build. It's no longer just waiting for enough gold, and this resource base is a very welcome strategy to bring into Total War. The last spot for resources are finite resource deposit regions, as mentioned in the last section. Pyskos has precious gold, but a very limited supply. I did really enjoy the idea of finite resources, even if it wasn't exactly historically accurate. There were a handful of comments in my previous videos on how this would work in a game like this, but we can see from the buildings you can build, at most the resource extraction sits at 55 gold per turn, meaning that even at this apparent late stage of the game, you wouldn't run out for another 64 turns. This isn't the only gold region, and a smart player would already be looking for a new one to conquer, or even look to begin trading for it if he could. That's the other flip side to finite resources, trade or tribute. It might be worthwhile or even necessary to shop around the market for a trade partner, or someone to conquer to turn into a client state with the resources you need, instead of campaigning just to take one type of settlement. Divine Will is one of the new features of any Total War game, and while they are in part act like rituals from Warhammer, it plays a large role overall to your campaign. As you can see, there are 7 gods you can build favor to, with favor ranging from neglected at 0 to worshipped at 350. Each god has their own set of benefits depending on how much favor you've generated with them, no doubt through temple dedications, rituals, and I'm assuming other mechanics like it. These benefits obviously coincide thematically with what they were known for and then cater to Total War. The range of benefits is vast, from unit buffs and traits to specific agent and hero upgrades to faction-wide campaign effects. I was very surprised at just how many benefits there are throughout and how it really caters to specific forms of playstyles, something I'll always applaud. The minor side of Divine Will are prayers. Prayers are the rituals I mentioned earlier. They'll cost multiple resources to enact, giving your faction very specific buffs for a short amount of time. It isn't clear if you can pray to any of the gods regardless of your favor with them, and honestly, it could work either way. It makes sense. A prayer of desperation to a god you don't have favor with could maybe have a percentage chance of being successful or failing. Or a prayer of servitude towards one god could cause favor to fall with all the others. Regardless, prayers seem to be designed for very specific events in which you need a quick upper hand to get through a small number of turns, and I really enjoy that idea. What also isn't explained is how many gods you can please at any given time. For this playthrough, it was clearly Athena and Poseidon, but would it be possible to have upwards of 3 to 4 gods at one time? Is favor to all gods a viable strategy even at the most basic respected tier? This is yet to be seen, but would be interesting if doable. Agents are another aspect we've always been aware of, and its format is yet another mirror from Warhammer. Not a bad thing, but it's pretty clear the use of the Warhammer engine is in every aspect of this game. There are 4 types of agents: envoys, spies, priestesses or priests, which we can quickly see are tied to specific gods, and epic agents. Epic agents are agents with a very few specific missions. These agents are rare and for good reason. They cannot fail in their mission regardless of what is going on. Very handy in a tight situation, and as we see in this video, used strategically to further the campaign. I know I haven't been very positive on the whole myth explained thing, but it's clear that these epic agents are designed as part of that theme, with the Gorgon looking as close to Medusa as you can while still being human. In this aspect, I actually really enjoyed that detail, and I look forward to seeing what other epic agents can achieve and their mythos inspiration. We don't get much to look at outside of that epic agent, but maybe in a future video they'll dive into them just a bit deeper. I won't go into the battles too much because, well, you know, I will say this. There are only 3 different textures of ponies in those centaurs. It looks awful, redundant, and really needs some more variations to look more natural. The chariots are hovering over the ponies, and it looks ridiculous. It really needs to sit on top of them somehow. Please get that fixed. And the 3 Kingdoms air barrage is evident throughout. Whatever happened to synchronized volleys like in previous titles? No one wants constant arrow fire. At least, I don't think anyone does. There is one positive from the battle, and that's the post-battle loot. Getting multiple types of resources at the end is really cool, and yet another incentive to take on armies. Lastly, for this video, I want to highlight Sarpedon's precious resources, which is a unique faction trait. Certain settlements apparently hold precious resource deposits, and as Sarpedon, if you conquer one of those regions, you will slowly gather those precious resources to stockpile. Once you've gained enough, you can distribute these resources for some pretty handy buffs to your campaign. It's not known if these are permanent or only last a certain number of turns, but it's still something really unique and makes me look forward to seeing what the other factions' unique mechanics do. To wrap this up, I said that the campaign for Troy was going to have to be absolutely amazing for this game to stand a chance in the wild. What we've gotten a taste of thus far in this short video is pretty much exactly what I wanted to see. A campaign map with a lot of regions, resources used to a much greater extent, great UI, for the most part, a very interesting use of the gods and divine will, and some interesting twists and unique faction mechanics. It definitely feels like the Sophia team has put more of their effort into polishing the campaign, and I will not complain one single bit. There is hope for Total War Saga Troy, and I for one look forward to seeing more of the campaign side of things in greater detail, and hopefully soon. If you enjoyed this look into Troy, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I'll be covering as much as I can to keep you up to date. A big shout out to my patrons, as they are going a long way to supporting the channel, and I appreciate every one of them. If you want to take part, check out my Patreon page in the description below. Thanks for watching, this is Havoc, and I'm out of here.